The Apollonian Mate, the NF. If ever a person died for love, it was sure to have been an Apollonian. NF. Romeo and Juliet, both NFs, could not face the prospect of life without each other, and so chose to die in a way which was symbolic of their single-minded and eternal commitment to each other. Other famous lovers, such as Heloise and Abelard, the Brownings, Antony and Cleopatra, Beth and the landlord's daughter, and her highwayman, all created a work of art in their courtships. This is not surprising, since one of the arts at which the NF is skilled is that of creating the romantic relationship. In fact, the term sex would seem somehow crude when used in discussing the NF. Love better captures their appreciation of the physical relationship. Both the NF male and female respond to their mates with sympathy, tenderness, and frequent passionate expressions of love, both verbal and nonverbal. Possessing facility with language, NFs are able to express nuances of emotions that may escape other types. NFs are not afraid of using poetry, music, and quotations to enhance their courting relationships. The romantic developments in the lives of NFs thrive on receiving these tokens of affection and dedication. NFs have a flair for dramatizing their courtships, making each the perfect love. A storybook flavor permeates their courtship behavior. The NF suitor is certain he will live happily ever after, and transmits this certainty to the object of romantic pursuit. The ideal of the perfect love that will never die motivates the NFs in their search for a partner who can relate spiritually as well as physically. They strive to be authentic lovers, capable of sustaining deep intimacy. Seeing their identity as mate is a major part of their personality. Just as the possible rather than the actual lures NFs in other parts of their lives, so do the possibilities in relationships inspire them. When a relationship is being established, the recipient of the NF's attention is apt to be the center of his world. The pursuit is given almost single-minded attention, and no effort is spared in the wooing. An undying love is in the offing, and once the physical relationship is consummated for a male NF, or the words of love spoken for a female NF, the relationship will be blessed with romantic bliss. Both NF males and females are likely to be blind to any flaws in their beloved in the early stages of romance. Life will be happy ever after, although the details of this happy ever after are usually not explored in depth. The romantic gesture and the idealization of the relationship are characteristic of the courting behaviors of the NF. The dream is sometimes preferred to reality. At times, the fantasy of the sexual encounter cannot survive the reality of consummation, especially for the male NF. It appears female NFs are more able to sustain the depth of romanticism involved with a relationship longer than male NFs. Excuse me. Once the physical side of the relationship is acted out, the male NFs can lose interest and turn to another fantasy. In a Oh, I do not know this word. Quixotic, quixotic way. He seems to be compelled to pursue the impossible dream of a larger-than-life, giant screen goddess who will be Madonna, mistress, lover, whore, mother, daughter, and wife. His real-life mate is not always able to measure up. The NF male, in hot pursuit, is likely to express a love which is undying, but which can vanish all too soon in the harsh light of the morning after. The female NF does not demonstrate this characteristic. Rather, she is likely to increase her dedication after the physical relationship is consummated. She becomes more and more devoted, continuing to romanticize the relationship and believe in its perfection, to give small transactions profound significance, to dramatize the interactions with her mate, to be willing to die for love. She seems seldom disappointed in the sexual act. Orgasmic response on her part is seen as inconsequential compared to the pleasure of giving pleasure to her mate. What matters is that he is fulfilled and satisfied. For the male NF, oh lordy, another word, Ennui, Ennui, can set in as a result of familiarity. For the female NF, this is not as likely to happen. The SP can say and mean, with Dorothy Parker, I'll be true as long as you, and not a moment after. The female NF is more likely to have, as a part of her mating identity, the image of falling in love once and for a lifetime. The fact that this does not always work out does not negate the possibility of the dream coming true. Fortunately, both male and female NFs have a capacity for deep affection and caring over and above sexual expression, and out of this capacity can grow a lasting, satisfactory relationship. I'm going to adjust this since my birds flew away. Give us just a little bit better additional view. How about that? Let's get back in there. Water just a little. Okay, in the last decade or so, a curious phenomenon has occurred, perhaps arising from the female NF's characteristic of maintaining her romantic dream, even in the face of a contradictory reality. The group that spearheaded the sexual revolution were the female NFs. It has been the female NFs who have said no to the double sexual and other standards. It has been the female NFs who have been most militant in demanding equal orgasmic rights. It has been the female NFs who have decided that they are not sure they will be true, even as long as their male partners. Somehow, family NFs have decided that their vision of a better, more satisfactory mating relationship can be actualized. They seem willing, in ever-growing numbers, to take whatever risks are necessary to find that relationship, either in or out of a legal contract. In fact, more and more, the NF females seem reluctant to tie themselves down to a legal arrangement, putting off the urgings of their housemates, asking that both wait until she is sure she is doing the right thing. More and more NF females seem to be willing to bear their children outside a legal arrangement and to raise them alone. This is not to say that other types are not also involved in this movement, but it is the NFs, along with a limited number of NT females, who provide the vanguard of the revolution. Instead of being ready and willing to die for love, the current NF female seems to be willing to live for the possibility of a better way of relating to males. Both male and female NFs are likely to be charming mates and a source of continuing warmth, support, and understanding. They are usually ready to lend sympathy to a mate when the outside world turns hostile, and are not apt to use that moment to point out the errors of a mate's ways, something which other types might be tempted to do. The NFs are generally skilled socially, and people usually feel wanted and well hosted in their homes. They often are experts in the arts of appreciation, especially in the area of personal characteristics, and they are apt to be generous in expressing these appreciations to their mate. It is probably the NF who is the most loving, dedicated, affectionate, appreciative mate, and is unstinting in the expression of these emotions, both to mate and to children. Their conversations, particularly those of extroverted NFs, are apt to be sprinkled with terms of endearment, especially in private. The NF can be as extravagant as an SP when expressing love through the media of gifts, but the NF is more likely to present the gift in private and select with extraordinary care something with special or even symbolic meaning. NFs, both male and female, usually remember birthdays, anniversaries, and the like without being prompted, or at most needing only a hint. If, in turn, the NF's milestones are not heeded, they are deeply hurt, as deeply as they are appreciative when theirs are noticed. Although NFs, especially the male NF, become restless if others, including mates and children, or parents, are dependent, NFs have in their own personalities characteristics that promote this dependency. They pride themselves on being sensitive to others and caring about them. It is almost impossible for NFs to be unaware of others' psychological needs. Yet the NF becomes restless when these ties begin to bind, as they do when the amount of emotional input becomes a psychological overload for the NF. At this point, the NF can seem cruel, insisting unexpectedly that the other stand on his own 2 feet. This shift in attitude is usually abrupt, and the person who heretofore believed that he was very special in the eyes of the NF now finds himself apparently rejected. The NF does not mean to be unkind. He or she is simply disconnecting a relationship which can no longer be handled. In spite of the reality that the NF created this dependent relationship through expressions of empathy and unique understanding. Building empathic relationships is second nature to this temperament, a master of the art of intimacy. But as those around the NF want more and more attention, more and more expressions of this unusual appreciation, more and more signals of deep affection, the NF mate becomes restless and resentful of pressures to deliver what had seemed promised: the ideal love, the perfect friendship, complete understanding, and total acceptance. The NF is vulnerable to this kind of misunderstanding because of his extraordinary capabilities to introject. He can take into himself the point of view, the emotions, and the psychological state of another so completely that the other feels totally received. The other person may not realize that the NF does this in most relationships, and may be hurt on discovering that he is not valued as uniquely as he first thought. Excuse me. When the NF leaves each person, the NF no longer resonates to that person, but relates to the person now present. Understandably, this can cause some difficulty in the mating relationship for mates who want this characteristic to be exercised more exclusively. The NF may not know how not to respond to the emotional demands of others. After the honeymoon is over, the mate of an NF can feel let down when the reality of living with the NF may be in some contrast with what was anticipated. The discovery by the mate that the NF is, after all, less than perfect often results in feelings of resentment, ill-deserved by the NF, but nonetheless real. NF mates themselves are in a dilemma. They are caught up in the romanticized expectations of the psychological and sexual experience generated in their own perceptions and encouraged by others. The fantasy is more than likely to be exaggerated by both the NF and the mate, and it is a common experience for NFs to express that anticipation was more delightful than consummation. The actual sexual act, in particular, can be less than anticipated, for more often than not, the NF's romantic nature will not allow him or her to acquire sexual expertise through study. Rather, they see themselves as somehow supposed to know the appropriate loving and tender approach intuitively. Consulting scientific studies is seen as cold and objective and somehow destructive. Thus, the actual sexual relationship may be a letdown initially and a disappointment to both partners until both acquire the necessary competency. Although NFs are almost hypersensitive to the moods of their mates, especially if they are also introverts, they may not always be willing to deal positively with the other's emotional reactions. NFs report that they find their own emotional circuits often so overloaded with their own concerns that they cannot deal with the emotional experiences of others who are especially close to them, particularly when experiences involve conflict and hurt. Thus, the mates of NFs can see their mates responding to relative strangers with a degree of warmth and acceptance that may not be available to them. As parents, NFs are sensitive to the viewpoint of their children, sometimes to the point of siding with them in a way which reinforces the youngsters' antisocial, self-defeating behaviors. An NF parent, for example, can rush to rescue a child from consequences of his wrongdoing, and in the process not permit the child to develop necessary skills which he needs to deal with the realities of a less protective world. NF mates may have difficulty detaching themselves from their jobs or social demands in order to preserve time for family. In this, the NF is like the SP. They have some difficulty saying no to attractive offers and thus may neglect priorities. Whoever is there and demanding time gets it, even though others may be waiting elsewhere. A danger an NF faces in his intimate relationships is that he will move from relationship to relationship rather than making the necessary effort to develop those already existing. The NF's tendency to experience anticipation is more attractive than consummation can cause him to use his energies pursuing the dream, excuse me, at the expense of what is actually available. Once an NF believes that he or she knows all there is to know about another, disinterest sets in. Restlessness and a sense of boredom develop. NFs, as do other types, want a certain amount of variety and change in their lives. Other types, however, may seek this through intellectual pursuits. Adjustment of living routines, vacations, new activities. The NF is most vulnerable to seeking this through searching out new relationships, more often than not at the expense of deepening those already existing. And the final paragraph. A quality an NF can bring to intimate relationships is an extraordinary sensitivity and ability to communicate emotionally. In the affective areas, the NF is without equal. No other type is as empathetic to others as is the NF. As mates, they can be a source of warmth, appreciation, and support, which other types have difficulty emulating. And that is the end of that. That was the end of 96. We'll start on 97, Temperament in Children. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate you.